Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Aaliyah, and in this video I'm going to be talking about my birth story. So I'm going to start off with my 38-week appointment. I gave birth at 38 plus 2, so 38 weeks and 2 days. It was normal. I have been experiencing some sharp pains towards my cervix that felt kind of like lightning crotch but reversed. And I spoke to my obstetrician about it, and she basically had told me not to worry about it. There's probably positional. In my head, I thought that I might be like dilating a little bit, but I didn't think too much of it. By the way, at this point, I had not lost my mucus plug or anything like that. My belly didn't even drop, which you would see if you watched my belly progression. My belly didn't even drop before I gave birth. But she did my fundal height, which is basically just them measuring the top of the uterus to the very bottom to see where you're at. And my previous appointment had been at 35 weeks. So at my 38-week appointment, my fundal height was exactly the same as my 35-week appointment. So she started basically indicating that she wanted me to get an induction potentially. So she had scheduled me for the following Monday, so in about a week, to get a growth scan, and if the growth scan came back that there wasn't any growth between that time, she wanted me to get induced. Basically what the worry is, she thought that it could indicate that my placenta wasn't working as well, which is common towards the end of pregnancy. The placenta can decline in efficiency, and I think that that probably is what happened. He had been measuring 2 weeks ahead my whole pregnancy, and then it went from him being 2 weeks ahead to him being 1 week ahead to being exact, and then 1 week behind, which is still normal, to 2 weeks behind, to the very end 3 weeks behind. So I do think that that's probably what was happening. So she had set that appointment for 1 week from that day, or 6 days from that day because it was the Monday. So on to 38 plus 1, day before I went into labor. I had leaked a ton of colostrum. It was like, which is basically like early milk or whatever. I was leaking a lot of it, and I was leaking since I was like 14 weeks, but it was just a lot on my shirt, which is weird. And I've never heard of that being like a labor symptom, but it's just what happened that day. So I had decided to go ahead and put box braids in. So I started braiding my hair that morning, like late morning, and I had got done early evening-ish. My husband and I had been watching movies or something like that. So we were getting ready for bed. It was around 11 o'clock. We were just, chilling or whatever. And I'd say around 11:30-ish, I started to get what I thought was Braxton Hicks contractions. We got it, and then we finally were getting ready to go to sleep, and it was intensifying. It was getting worse. Mind you, this came out of nowhere. It just came out of nowhere. I was out of the blue. I started getting these contractions that felt like Braxton Hicks at first, but they were a little bit painful, and they were happening every 2 to 4 minutes. So I downloaded a contraction timer, and I monitored it for about an hour. My husband was really tired because we didn't get much sleep the night before this. So he was like, just come to bed. If you were in labor, you'd know, etc., etc. And so I waited an hour, and I called labor and delivery. And I couldn't lay down because laying down was making it worse. So walking around was kind of helping me manage the contractions. When I laid down, it was just getting more painful, so I didn't want to lay down. So I ended up calling labor and delivery after about an hour, and I had told them that I had been tracking my contractions for an hour, and my contractions were 2 to 4 minutes apart consistently. So when I spoke to the nurse, she basically told me that if I was in labor, if I was in active labor, so 6 centimeters and above is active labor, 1 to 5 is early labor. So she was like, if you were in active labor, you would know it. She said that I wouldn't be able to speak through contractions and things like that, and that I sound like I'm probably okay. So I was like, okay. I went into the shower, which helped a lot. That was the one thing that helped throughout the whole labor, is getting in water, basically. I jumped in the shower. That helped. As soon as I got out, it was back to normal, and it continued for another hour. So at this point, it had been 2 hours of me getting these contractions, every 2 to 4 minutes. I was like, we should probably go just to get checked. I thought that I was going to be told that I'm in early labor, but I just wanted confirmation. I was like, since everybody, like, nobody really thinks I'm in labor, I was like, I probably am in early labor. And I just wanted to confirm it just so that I knew, and I'm not just at home not sure if I'm in labor or not. If you hear little noises, my son is right here. Yeah? This is CJ. He'll be 4 months next week. So my bag, my hospital bag, was like half packed at this point. I had started, I just wasn't done yet. And I didn't bring my camera or anything like how I wanted to. I just brought what we had ready at the time, and I grabbed some snacks. So we get to the hospital, we get to triage, and we waited like what felt like forever for the doctor to come in. And they finally come in, and she checks my cervix, and she's like, she looks at the nurse, the doctor looks at the nurse, and she's like, she's 6 centimeters dilated and 80% effaced, and you can't leave, basically. So I so regret not bringing my camera because I wanted to do like a birth vlog. But regardless, I couldn't leave at that point, and I wanted my husband to stay with me because I didn't know what was going to happen further on, whatever. So basically, I was just laboring on. I only started to really, it took me like 4 hours. It took me a long time. Like, I showed up at 6 centimeters, so they thought that I was just gonna dilate really quickly and give birth really quickly. But it took me a really long time to get to 8 centimeters. It took hours for me to get to the 8 centimeters. And I got to 8 and I got stuck. And I was stuck there for about 4 hours, if I remember right. So they kept checking me, and it was so discouraging. I wanted to go natural, but it was so discouraging for me that I was stuck at 8 centimeters. I was managing my pain really well. I was listening to hypnobirthing. I had like my essential oil thingy that I was like smelling that helped me relax. So I had asked for pain meds. I wanted the pain medication that goes into the drip. I don't know what it's called, but it's not the epidural, it's something else. And I think they asked the midwife. There was a midwife and a doctor coming in to check on me, as well as nurses. And basically the midwife, she wasn't comfortable with me getting the drip medication because of how far dilated I was already. So my dilation was staying the same, but my effacement did increase to 100%. And yeah, they told me that basically I couldn't get the other alternative pain medications. So I just asked for the epidural because I remember one of the nurses had told me that if you're gonna get it, you have to get it when you're still able to sit still. At this point, I was in pain. I was in a lot of pain, but I was still breathing through my contractions. I wasn't screaming or anything like that. But I was in pain, and I was like, well, if I don't get it now, what if I end up wanting it in like a couple hours? And at that point, I can't sit still for them to place the epidural. So I went ahead and got it, and the anesthesiologist, he came in, and he was trying to be extra cautious because I have scoliosis. So he placed the epidural or whatever, and once it was placed, they gave me this button to like press to add more medication. He had asked me if it was working, and I was like, it seems like it's working well on my left side, but my right side, it wasn't working all the way. It was like I couldn't feel from like my knee down, but my thigh upwards, my uterus and everything, I could feel the contractions, and it started to get more painful on my right side in my back. So yeah, basically he told me it might take a while, so he left. The nurses came in to check on me again. They tried flipping me, so I was laying on my right side to help the medication like flow downwards, and that didn't really help. So they called him back, and they were like, her epidural is only working on one side. So he tried to pull the catheter. They put a catheter in your spinal column basically to keep the medication flowing, and he tried to pull the catheter back because he said sometimes it goes in kind of swayed to one side. So so he pulled it back because he said sometimes that could straighten the catheter and help the medication flow better. So they came in and they tried that, and it still didn't work. It was still the same thing. I basically had an epidural and a half because my knees, my full left side was numb, and then my knees down on my right side was numb. So yeah, basically I had an epidural and a half. I didn't want them to replace it or anything. I was like, I asked my husband, I was like, I don't know if I could really stay perfectly still at this point for them to do it. And I was also nervous about getting the epidural in the first place. So I just labored on with an epidural and a half, basically. Moving on to when it was time to push, I remember my husband had fallen asleep on the couch. A bunch of like nurses and stuff were coming in, and he was just knocked out. So he ended up waking up during the commotion of all of it. By the way, I had been in the hospital for like 19 hours at this point. So at 38 plus 2 midnight-ish, I got to the hospital around like 3 a.m. maybe. And this is the nighttime. So I had been there the entire day, and it was nighttime now. My baby was born at 8:37 p.m. He had fallen asleep. He woke up during all the commotion and all the people coming in, and it was time to push. So I started pushing, and I was so scared of pushing prior to, even though everyone said it doesn't hurt, it really doesn't. The pushing felt like a relief to the contractions. So I was pushing. It only took about 20 minutes for him to come out, but it was kind of a scary moment because his heart rate kept dropping. So they had like the little monitor thingy facing towards us, so my husband and I could look up and see it. My husband could see it. He was on my right side, and his heart rate kept dropping. It had dropped down to like 40 or 50 at some point, which is really low for a newborn. So I got really scared. They called some other doctor, and they brought the vacuum and like these clasper things to pull him out if they needed to, or to suction him out or to vacuum him out if they needed to. Which I was like, do whatever as long as he comes out healthy. That was the main thing that I was thinking of at that point. So I was pushing and pushing, and I wasn't looking at the monitor, but I was getting nervous because I saw like the nurse look at the doctor like, we probably need to suction the baby out or something. Like they just gave each other, you guys know what I'm talking about, they gave each other this look of worry basically. So I pushed and pushed, and I was pushing so hard, like with all my might, and I was like closing my eyes. And I remember at one point they brought out a mirror to like see his head, and I saw his head like crowning through the mirror, and I was like, oh. So yeah, once I saw, it was just so weird to see like a person basically there coming out of your body. So I kept pushing, and I was like closing my eyes super tight, and then I felt this huge relief, and they were like, open your eyes, and I opened my eyes, and the doctor was like pulling him up, and it was such a surreal moment. It felt like a movie. It was such a euphoric moment. It was amazing. She just pulled him up, and they put him on my chest, and I was crying. My husband was crying, and we were just so relieved that he was there and he was healthy. And it was a beautiful, wonderful moment. It's so cliche, and everybody says it, but it's just an amazing moment. It's a rush of emotions. And our baby boy was born. Now he's almost 4 months old. Time goes by literally so fast. I feel like I just had him. So yeah, that's basically my birth story. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.